Hey, book community. So I have noticed as of late that a lot of different creators, booktubers, have been ranking their or sharing their top book ones, book twos, book threes of series, and so on. I thought it was time that I join in and do that as well. So I'm going to be sharing with you my top book ones of 2023. Now, really, when I began last year around August, constantly reading all of the time, at least back to back, I have been a part of I've started a lot of series. In fact, I think I counted about 17 series. I finished several of them, a good many of them, and I've not finished some of them. But I just want to take this year in 2023 and talk about the book series that I have been reading and my top 10 favorites so far. Now, I know we have a whole 6-7 months left to go in the year, but I thought it would be a good time to go ahead and share with you what I've been reading and, again, the book ones of 2023 so far. So, to get started, I wanted to start this off strong. I am currently rereading, and I'm saying this because I'm not going to count any rereads in this, but I did want to share I am currently rereading The Lord of the Rings, and right now I am almost done. I am on the last 2 chapters of The Lord of the Rings, of the Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm loving it. It is everything that I love. Tolkien has stood the test of time for a reason, and this has just been such a wonderful, I've had a wonderful experience reading this. And it is book 1 of the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings. But again, I'm not counting it, but I wanted to mention it because I'm reading it and it is a book 1. But aside from that, first of all, I want to talk about an honorable mention. Now, the only reason this ended up in an honorable mention is I took all of the book 1s of 2023 and I wanted to rank them in my top 10. Well, counting this one that I'm going to be talking about next, I've done 11. Really, I've done 12 counting the Fellowship of the Rings. But aside from that, I've done 11. So for as far as 11, I need to have an honorable mention. So my honorable mention is The Wizard of Earthsea. Well, this is the Earthsea trilogy. This is the first 3 books of Ursula K. Le Guin's the Earthsea cycle. There's several more books outside of 3, but this is just the first 3. And I read The Wizard of Earthsea. I think this was my very first book of January of 2023, and I really enjoyed it. I had never read any Ursula K. Le Guin. I read this, the whole book, well, the first 3 books of that, and all it really did was whet my appetite to read more. I think I shared this on a former video that I've seen some other booktubers with a very nice edition of the Earthsea books, and I hope to get that soon to add it to my collection anyway, and so I can finish the rest. So I don't want to finish the rest until I get that edition. So this is my honorable mention, the Earthsea, or the Wizard of Earthsea. All right, now for my top 10. At number 10, we have The Final Empire, Brandon Sanderson. Now, I think I said earlier on in a video that I may not be the best place to come for your Brandon Sanderson content. That's mainly because I've not gotten very far in it yet. I've enjoyed everything that I've read by Brandon Sanderson, including this, and is the reason it shows up on this top 10 list anyway. I've heard a lot of great things about the Mistborn trilogy, and I know there are some more books, and I'll hopefully get to them one day, but I've only read book 1 so far of Mistborn, and so I read this. I think this may have been actually my second book of 2023. I read this, and I was captivated by the story. I love the magic system. I am finding that I do enjoy hard magic systems, as this would be, though I'm still partial to soft magic system. But anyway, this was good. Brandon Sanderson, obviously, I don't have to gush about him. You know him, you love him, I would assume. And this was a wonderful book, wonderful characters. Everything about it was good. I don't remember. I had to go back and see what kind of star rating I gave it, but I'm sure it was high. I doubt I gave anything less than 4 stars so far that Brandon Sanderson has written, or at least what I've read by him. But this is my number 10 book for my top 10 book ones of 2023. And number 9 is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Now, I know some people say, well, that should go a lot higher. And it may should, and I'm sure it would go a lot higher on pretty much anybody's list. I enjoyed it. I have no complaints for this book. I think I have enjoyed some other books that I've read by Robin Hobb more. Specifically, I've read the first ship of the first book of the Live Ship Traders, and that's my favorite of all so far. But this, I have no complaints about. I loved it. Everybody knows the character work that Robin Hobb does is second to none, and it's just wonderful stuff here. I'm not going to really give a synopsis of it. You either know what it's about or you can go look it up. But anyway, this is my number 9, book 1 of 2023. My number 8 book, and it's going to be The Winter King by Bernard Cornwell. Now, if I were ranking my book 2s, which of course would be The Enemy of God, it would be higher on my top 10 list. I'm sure I'm going to get to that eventually. This ranks a little lower, not because it was a bad book. I enjoyed it. I absolutely enjoyed it, but I really enjoyed the final scene, I guess you would say, the last 100 pages of this book more than the rest of it. I felt like it may have been a little difficult to follow along. So not difficult to follow along, but it really took off for me in the last 100 pages. And it was a wonderful read, and really it whet my appetite for more of Bernard Cornwell, and that's when I went and read The Enemy of God, and it just was a tremendous book, one of my favorite books of the year. But this was a wonderful book, a wonderful start to the Warlord Chronicles. All right, now my number 7 book. I cannot find my copy of my number 7 book. It's somewhere among my books, but I can't find it right now, and it is The Gunslinger by Stephen King. Now, The Gunslinger can kind of be a little controversial sometimes. I've listened to a lot of people talk about what they thought about the Dark Tower books or Stephen King books, and The Gunslinger sometimes ranks very low. I enjoyed it. I had a very good experience with The Gunslinger. A lot of dark things in it, obviously. If you've read it, you know what I'm saying. But it was a very good experience for me. And so it ranks a little higher than some of these other, obviously, in this list. Now, for my number 7 book of my book ones of 2023 is Red Rising. Once again, if I were ranking books further on in this series, they would be a lot higher. Probably number 1. But Red Rising, probably, I didn't not enjoy it by any stretch of the imagination. It was a great book. Again, just as I said for The Winter King, it whet my appetite for the rest. But probably not my favorite book of the series. But that ends after Red Rising. When you get into Golden Sun, I have a hard time ranking what books in the Red Rising books that I like the most. In fact, now I just finished this past week. I just finished Dark Age, and I am still loving it. I'm still in it. I like the sequel books. I won't say right now that I like the sequel books more than I like the original trilogy, but it's close. It's very close, and I am so ready for Library to come out. But Pierce Brown is quickly becoming my favorite author. Now, I have said that Tolkien is my favorite author, and I stand by that. And it's going to be hard to ever displace him as my favorite author of all time. However, I think I may have to do the category for Pierce Brown as my favorite living author. I've been thinking about that, and I guess I'm announcing that. Wasn't planning, but Pierce Brown is becoming my favorite living author. I love what he's doing with this series. I've already encouraged other people to begin reading it, and several have let me know that they're jumping in or they're planning on jumping in, and I haven't heard anybody disappointed yet. So, Red Rising is number 6 on my list. Now, my top 5. So, I have always been a fan of this franchise, I guess you would say, but I've never read the books. I've only watched movies, I've only seen shows, I played with toys, you probably already know what I'm talking about, but I've never read the books until this year. And this year, I picked up Heir of Empire, Star Wars Heir of Empire, the first book of the Thrawn trilogy. Disney ain't got nothing on this. They should have came here and used this source material to make the other movies, in my opinion. I know you may disagree with that, but that's just my opinion. I loved hanging out with these characters. It's the legacy characters. It's Luke, it's Leia, it's Han, it's Chewie, the ones you love, and then a wonderful antagonist. I'm ready to see how he grows and becomes an even better antagonist, because I believe he's going to do it. Timothy Zahn did a wonderful job with this, and I cannot wait to move forward. I've only read this. In fact, I've pushed it back. I've pushed book number 2 back, I think, about 2 months now. I've been doing this just because I've been having a lot of other books, a lot of chunky books, and I keep having to push something back. And so book number 2 has been pushed back a couple of times already. I'm hoping to get to it in June. I'm ready to get to it. Wonderful, wonderful book. Book 5 of my top book ones of 2023. All right, now number 4. You've heard me talk about this. If you've watched past videos, kind of rave over it a little bit. Had to give some warnings about it, but that's okay. We Are the Dead. You will not find a more brutal book. It's taking place in a war. Not only a war in the after the war kind of had ended, the conquered nation, which were the good guys, it seems like all hope's lost for them. And then we see what's happening next in this book. In this first book of the trilogy of the Last War trilogy, I've read book 2. I am eagerly anticipating reading book 3 by Mike Shackle. My goodness, what a book, what a read. If you haven't picked this up yet, if you have a problem with language, it's got language. If you have a problem with excessive violence, it's got excessive violence, but it also has characters that you love or you hate, you get disappointed in, you have feelings about it. And I tell you, that's a mark of someone who's writing good characters, when you have strong feelings about those characters. There are some books that I've read that are highly, highly rated books and have been around for a while, and I didn't care about the characters. I'm not going to name what it is at this video. I think I've already talked about it in a past video, but I didn't care about the characters, but not this. Mike Shackle's making you care about these characters, and I love what he's doing, and I can't wait to see his conclusion in this trilogy. All right, my top 3. So, my top 3, I did not plan this. In fact, as I was writing this out, I didn't even realize that it was this way until I'd already finished. My top 3 are all from indie authors, self-pub books. The best books I've read this year. Now, I have read some wonderful books this year. I'm telling you, this year, it's going to be hard to choose a book of the year. But at number 3 is Never Die by Rob J. Hayes. This is another book that I've raved over, I've gushed over. I constantly promote it on Twitter and other social media. I'm constantly recommending this to people because people don't know what they're missing if they haven't read Never Die. First of all, look at that cover. Oh my goodness, look at that cover. And all the books have amazing cover. In fact, I've even looked at other series that he's working on or has worked on and is working on. Everything he does is amazing as far as the covers. And so far, in the first 2 books I've read by him, the writing matches, the story matches. If you haven't picked this up, pick it up. I can see it's like manga without the pictures. it's just great stuff here. So anyway, if you hadn't picked it up, pick it up. This is my book 3 so far in this year. Now, book number 2. I'm telling you, these top 3 books, it could have been any one of them on top. It could have been any one of them on top, but this is just how it fell. Book number 2 is Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill. This is from the first book of the Bound and the Broken series. I know several people have been talking about it. I had to jump on and see what it was all about, and it was wonderful. I read the novella The Fall first, which some people said you should read that later. Some people said you should read that first. I think Ryan has said, whatever you want to do it. And so I read The Fall first. I loved it, and then I immediately jumped into Of Blood and Fire, and I just devoured this book. I'll show you. I cracked the spine. I don't know how that happened. I was careful with it. I laid it out. I opened it just right. I was careful with it, and as I was reading it one day, I felt it happen, and I cracked the spine. Don't know how it happened, but it is what it is. It's a loved book, and it should be a loved book because it was a wonderful book. A lot of people don't like books being compared to other books. Their books being compared to other books. But I got Lord of the Rings feelings out of it. I got Wheel of Time feelings out of it. Your classic fantasy. I got tropes. I got the setup, but that wasn't a bad thing. I never felt bored. I never felt like I've read this before. This is the same old repackaging of young people in a village. They leave the village, something bad happens. No, it's wonderful. I love the setup. I'm in right now. I'm about 6 chapters into Of Darkness and Light. I really plan on, after finishing The Fellowship of the Ring, jumping into that and going further in that, finishing it hopefully pretty quickly. But anyway, book number 2. Pick this up if you haven't. It is a wonderful, wonderful read, and I'm hearing that there's really no down parts in this entire series. They get bigger, they get thicker the further they go. That's not a bad thing. Anyway, book number 2. And finally, book number 1. This is another book that I have gushed over. I have gushed over the author. He did some amazing things in this. If you keep up with the channel, so far I've only done 1 book review. I'm pretty new. I'm only 3 or 4 months old. This Go Read Books is. However, I've only done 1, and this book became my number 1 book 1, and that is The Way of Edan. Now, maybe you say, you should really read more books in the series before you say it's your favorite book 1. Maybe so. This was an amazing book. This was an amazing story. It just gripped me at the right time. I read it at the right time. It meant a lot to me. The characters were wonderful. The story was wonderful. Yeah, it's a slow pace, but that's a good thing for me. I don't mind a slower paced book. Now, of course, books can get too slow. Pacing can be too drawn out. However, I loved this. It was wonderful. Religion is a big deal to me, and so you see religion, or this particular religion, the Way of Edan, versus what they would call pagans or heretics, and I'm telling you, this was for me. And so I am ready. I am so ready for book number 2, The Prophet of Edan. I believe that's what it's called, to come out in June. And then when the next one comes out, I'm going to pick that up and read it too. I love The Way of Edan. And hey, I even want to listen to Alan, his audio version of it. I'm excited about that. But hey, this was a wonderful book. And this is my contender already for my book of the year. I'm not making that decision yet because I've read other books that I would say are amazing too, and there are other books that I plan on reading this year that I know are going to be amazing. So I won't make that decision yet, but this is absolutely a contender for me. So anyway, that's my top 10, with also honorable mention, and then obviously The Fellowship of the Ring, which just is always there for me. So there's my top 10 book 1s of 2023 so far. Well, thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. Thank you for listening, and until next time, go read books.